Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this County Commission meeting to order for February 21st. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please silence all your cell phones. Take a moment of silent prayer. Start this morning with roll call with myself. Commissioner Culberson is here. Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Vicki Cos.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
All present and accounted for. Public comment. Didn't have anybody signed up for public comment. Lou, would you like to speak at public comment this morning, Mr. Clint?
Yeah.
Please come forward and state your...
brought that up. Glad to see there's a sitting member here. I'm just going to dissertate on a lot of BS. We don't have an engineer in Leavenworth, and we don't have an engineer in Leavenworth County, okay? It's about time somebody functioned here and said, why don't we get an engineer? Don't get rid of these guys necessarily. I'm not here to pick on him. But we need an engineer who can make a decision. We don't go out and hire somebody for $250,000 or $100,000, and because a lot of decisions could really be made. It's like I went to a dissertation of the Leavenworth Preservation Commission, and a lady from Johnson County went to KU. She said, well, MoDOT is a part of this. And then she said something else, and all of a sudden the guy, chairman, said, oh, excuse me, Mr. Clinton, did you have something you wanted to say? Well, they already had voted on it. MoDOT doesn't have a thing to do with that bridge. And in 15 to 20 years, they're talking about that's when they will do something with the road, okay? Now, you ladies and gentlemen need to be, I guess you call you people, need to be functioning with the city of Leavenworth, and let's get something done to get back in the old days where the government functioned. You did a 4% pay increase, I think it came to around $53,000 now, and then a 3,000 something for dissertation, and so it's around $56,000. That's a lot of money. I think we were $6,000 in 1978. I didn't take any health. I didn't take anything from the county. Didn't take anything from the state. I ran because there's one of three reasons you run. You got something you want to do, something you don't want to do, and who knows, maybe you just want the recognition. Who knows what it is? The county. All through these little dissertations that were in the paper, everybody's going to function on the taxes. There's nobody functioning on the taxes. You did on your salary. The state did on their salary. 90%? My God. Now we're going to have full-time employees. Does anybody care? Oh, no. Nobody cares. Hell, it's just money. But don't do anything on the property tax. They need to put a toll bridge on that for that Navy lieutenant who's getting $114,000 to $120,000 a year when I made $10,000 and pay that dollar each way because he's living in Kansas City, Missouri. I thought it was interesting. The warden, his salary was $161,000. And where's he living? Or in Missouri. Does anybody care? No. You guys need to do something about the property tax, even though you've done something about your salary. Now it's becoming a full-time thing where people that are going to run can live on $56,000. And I did one thing. I took a tour up to by my farm years ago, and yep, my name isn't on that bridge. The county did something I asked them not to do. Don't put my name on that bridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Property tax.
Mr. Flint. Seeing no more public comment, move on to administrative business. Mr. Lothar, do you have anything this morning? Mr. Rampers, any of the commissioners?
I do.
Mr. Smith?
Apologizing in advance for the length it's going to take.
Okay.
Has any of the commissioners looked at, and I know Mr. Lawfrey has, House Bill 2599. It pertains to the fees for open records and how that would affect our county. I mean, we collect exactly what it costs, right? Yes, sir.
Commissioners, Leavenworth County is subject to the Kansas Open Records Act, and we endeavor to comply with the provisions of that act. In fact, the philosophy that's been applied to that is we work towards making the public's request for public documents to be as streamlined, as direct, and as quick as possible. Some requests can be answered in a matter of moments, in which case we don't charge anything for those things. Further, we generally allow any citizen one request per year, dependent upon the length or substance of that request, without charge as well. The new bill that's been submitted, to my understanding, would require the county to not charge anything where the search for the records was less than $100. That would basically cover 95 or more percent of all of the requests we receive. The fiscal impact to the county would, quite frankly, be nominal, but it does basically require general taxpayers to subsidize any individual requests.
Okay, and then the Senate Bill 468, that's the one I was trying to think of last week or week before. I thought 373, but it's 468. It pertains to economic development restrictions. And I believe has something to do with revenue neutral. Have any knowledge of that or of where that bill's at and how it would affect our county?
Is that the one with the exemption? If you claim exempting people from property taxes, then
No. This has something to do with if you're not going to remain revenue neutral, it has something to do with your economic development.
Oh, that's a different bill.
Commissioners, I don't think we've had a chance to review that sufficiently enough to provide an economic impact. And I'm not sure that it's going to make it to a vote this year.
Don't think it's going to go anywhere. Okay.
But we'll look at it a little further and try to.
Yeah, I saw that, Doug.
Yeah. And then Olathe, they got a new pet food plant, and they offered 50% tax abatement. And then, is there any need for us to have an executive session on any legal interests of the county in the near future?
Well, Commissioners, it has been quite some time since I provided you a comprehensive overview of the litigation and other legal matters the county currently has ongoing. I'd be happy to do that at your convenience, either next week or the following week.
Okay. Whatever works. And I think that might be it, because the other we'll get into, it's on the agenda when we're talking about projects.
Okay.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes, sir.
If I might, being your attorney and always the bearer of good news, if I could, since you referenced litigation and legal matters, I'd like to remind the Commissioners, please do not discuss the legal matters of the county with any other individuals. You may discuss it between one other Commissioner, and that's it. And don't discuss it with individuals outside of county government unless you wish to make them a witness or a potential witness in legal matters. So that's my dissertation for the morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
That's all I
Rampers.
have.
Okay. Any other commissioners have anything for Mr. Evans? Commissioner
A couple things. Follow up on what Commissioner Smith said. There's a few items that I think we need to be updated on. Some of the issues that we talked about. We had a 30-day time frame running on, and I think that definitely needs to be followed up. And see if the attorney in that case could be with us also.
And Commissioner, we are preparing a report to the overall commission on that matter, and be happy to present it to you in executive session.
Okay. I think I have a list of questions for him, but we'll do it in executive session. The other thing a couple other items. Property tax bill, talked about legislation in Topeka. passed through the Senate, it would be a cap on property taxes at 4%. Went over to the House, sits in the House Taxation Committee, and to this point in the session, the legislators have not determined that they even need to have a hearing on it. They have not even had a hearing on that piece of legislation. Had 5 property tax task force meetings in my district, and that is an issue that we had unanimous support from citizens that their property taxes should be capped, and then it would catch up when it's conveyed. And the legislature, in their wisdom, has decided that that's not even important enough to have a hearing on the House side. So if they haven't had a hearing, I don't anticipate they'll have a vote. So just for the residents, if you can contact your state representatives, they still have time. All they need to do is adopt the Senate version. It'll go to the voters. So anyway, we have been trying to get property tax relief, but we can't do it here. It has to be done there. So
Constitutional amendment would go on a primary, right?
it would go in the general election.
It's general?
General election. I think it's how the bill's written.
Okay.
You can put it on either one,
Yeah.
but this one's for the general.
And to explain that a little better for people who might not know, we're talking about a bill that would put a 4% cap. For instance, if your appraised value went up 25% all in 1 year, this would only allow it to go up 4% each year until it caught up to that 25%. So it would gradually slide you into the increase instead of getting a 25% hit all in 1 year.
It would eliminate the spikes that people are getting. It's going to drive our seniors out of their homes.
It's like a safety valve that the Canvas system didn't come out with originally that it should have, I think.
And then if you do sell your property, it comes up to the market value. So that's what makes it constitutional, because you're still keeping with the appraisal process, because when it sells or conveys, it goes to market value.
Who's lobbying against it?
I don't know everyone, but I know that the Kansas Realtors Association is opposed, which I feel bad because I'm a realtor. But
So you're lobbying against it?
I'm not. I also thought we should discuss among ourselves the current refunds that taxpayers could have. There's 3 programs: the homestead refund, the Safe Senior Kansas Property Tax Relief for Low-Income Seniors, and the Senior and Disabled Veterans Property Tax Refund. These are 3 things that are already on the books that I think a lot of people are not aware of. The homestead refund is a rebate program for property taxes paid by homeowners prior to January 1, 2023. The refund is based on a portion of the property tax paid on a Kansas resident's homestead. If you own a home, the refund is a percentage of your general property tax. The maximum refund is $700. This refund program is not available to renters. And then there's more qualifications. The Safe Senior program is a property tax relief for low-income seniors. The Safe Senior refund is a property tax refund program administered under the provisions of the Kansas Homestead Act. Safe Senior is also referred to as the Kansas Property Tax Relief for Low-Income Seniors. The refund is up to 75% of the 2023 general property tax paid to be paid on the 2023 real estate tax statement for the residence in which the claimant lived in 2023. And then you can read the other requirements. And then the third program that's in place right now is the Senior and Disabled Veterans Property Tax Refund, the SVR. As the property tax amount of the claimant's home increases over the years, the amount of property tax over the base year amount is refunded back to the claimant. This is in essence locking in the presumable lower property tax by refunding any increased amount of property tax back. And then there's qualifications. But I encourage people, if you're in a situation where it's a hardship, look this up. This is online, or you can contact any of the commissioners. We'll help you with it. But these are programs that are in place right now.
You going to report on President Biden's student loan payoff?
I didn't have the report on that today.
Well, it was on there this morning.
Oh, was he?
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe Commissioner Cause and I, we have quite a few things still to probably report on from our trip.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
I had just one more I'd left
Yes, sir.
out. Mr. Lawfrey, what month will we know what our health insurance increases will be? I mean, starting to do preliminary budget things and.
Yeah, we typically we get kind of a preliminary number around the March, April timeframe, but we don't get a final number until more like June.
Okay, and the cost of living that federal government says it is, what would that be?
I think the last CPI I looked at for the year was 3.1%, but I think that was
What did they give Social
last month,
Security?
January.
What'd Social Security get? I'm looking at you,
Yeah,
Mike.
that's about that too.
About 3%,
Yeah,
that's all?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I don't get it yet, so don't look at
No, I wasn't looking at you.
it quite yet.
I was looking at Mike.
Thank you.
They raised, yes, but they raised the age on me, so I have to wait longer.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I
Oh,
have to
okay.
wait longer.
But, so it's,
I think
we're
it's
looking
something
at
better.
3, so, I know this is awful early in the budget, but, so we're looking at maybe only 3% on our employees, cost of living.
Well, last year we did a 2% CPI adjustment and I guess 2024, we did a 2% CPI adjustment, and then we have usually a 2% step increase.
On the pay plan.
Yes.
I smell smoke.
Y'all smell something hot?
There must be a big grass fire outside. It's
Okay.
not in the building.
Famous last words.
Making sure.
It's my
We had
brain.
it this
My
morning,
brain.
one of the other buildings was already experiencing it.
Is that roof falling? Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just, till we get our final appraisals in and know where we're at, because I think we're going to be a little low on funds this year.
Oh, we need to be planning on that in advance.
I know,
Start
but I
talking.
want to make sure employees are, not, because Commissioner Culver's and I had worked here many years when they bounced the budget on the back of the employees.
And
I
we
don't
need-
want to be that person.
And we need to keep the fact in sight, too, that we've lost 87 employees out of 350 over the last 12 months.
Right.
And almost all of them left because of pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The social security adjustment was 3.2%.
Yeah, I know it's close, yeah.
Okay.
Any other administrative business?
That's all I have.
Your letter that you issued, I got a copy of it out to all the departments. You were shooting for about a 2.5%.
Well, I think our valuation is likely to be, I think the county appraiser in the email that I sent to you all said it's around 4.5% property valuation increase. But that's only about 50 to 60% of our actual revenue, which is so reflects maybe a 2.5% increase in revenue stream if everything else stays flat. And since I can't imagine the board is going to be really excited about increasing the mill levy, that's the message that I sent to our.
I'll tell you one thing, Connie, is I'm not going to go back to the days that Doug and Jeff remember years ago about salaries for employees. That's going to be a priority to me because you're losing 80-something people. You got people with experience and knowledge, and you need to keep them. We can't make it. We're not going to get rich. You're not supposed to unless you're in Congress when you work for the people. But we can probably do better. Or some of my priorities would be towards employees before they'll be above anything. That and roads and stuff like that are going to be key on my. That's just me speaking, Mark.
Well, that's the email you're referencing is I sent out. That's why I sent that out.
Right.
It looks like our revenue is probably, if everything else holds, 2.5% increase.
So with that kind of a valuation increase, like with last year's enormous valuation increase, we brought in an extra about $4 million with the revenue. But when we get it down to 4.5, we're only talking about 1.2 to 1.5 million.
Well, first of all, Commissioner, I want to correct you in that you said it brings in an extra $4 million in revenue. That's assuming that our other revenue streams stay the same, which I have pointed out they do
They did not.
Well,
We've lost other streams of revenue.
well,
So
I understand that, but I'm talking about
the property tax
property tax.
generated about $4 million more in revenue, but overall our revenue did not go up.
We've got one of our
Well-
larger buildings in town that keeps going down every year because it's empty.
Well, of course, I was referring to property taxes
Okay.
in that. And the point I was making is instead of getting an extra $4 million, you're going to get an extra $1.5 million. And with the demands of the spending that we see, it's going to be a very difficult
This is going to be
budget.
the tough. I said this was going to be the tough one.
And I also think, it's a priority to always wages is a top. Any organization, wages is like the number one expense, and wages is a top priority. We have, however, the 5 years I've been on the commission, we've consistently been giving raises all the way through, and one year we gave additional raises. I feel like this commission has been attempting to stay current with the wages. I don't think we'll ever be able to compete with the private sector.
No,
But,
I know that, and we won't be able to compete with Johnson County either.
But we also have to remember that every time we replace somebody and have to train,
Training.
it's incredibly expensive.
The cost associated with it,
The
it's
cost
high.
associated with it is very high, and like you said, the institutional knowledge that you lose is also a huge loss. So we have to try to do our best to keep our employees.
Well, I'm committed to it.
And Mike, I wasn't trying to say that we can give them everything or everybody like that. But wasn't trying to say that we haven't tried to do something the last few years. I know the last few years I've seen some, especially after COVID, something like that. But I think, in my opinion, that still has to be a priority if you want to keep good people. And I hear some people say, "Well, I only got a certain percent." Well, I'm sorry. Come work for the county if you think we're making enough money out here. So I don't like to compare it to a private business. When you're dealing with the county, I like to compare it counties to counties, cities to cities. But when it comes down to it, if that person is producing, I'll give you a good example. Aaron, in my opinion. The money Aaron has saved us on doing some of these things and what he's recommended, we could have given a lot of salaries or spent a lot more money, but he's brought that forward to us because his knowledge of these buildings and of Cushing, and he knows how this is one expected thing, and they give you 110%. And Aaron's not the only employee I've seen do it from the county level. There's a lot of top notch. In fact, I hate to see some people when they retire because they've been here for so long. It's a good thing to have them retire because that means they stuck around with us for a long time, and hopefully they enjoyed working with all of us. But if you're going to make a difference in the community, in the county, you've got to have people that are capable and knowledgeable to continue going forward. That's why I say again, salaries are very important to me. Will I say we're going to give 30%? I'd never do that. And Doug's right about Johnson County, even though I think we always compete to do better. But there's other things that we've done too. I mean, we try to keep the health care down and other things like that. These are all the things that we need to stay in front of to make sure that we're giving them everything they can, so they want to be a happy employee who's going to work harder for you. And there's always going to be some that want to go the grass is greener. And there's going to be some that want to come back. We've seen that. But I think salaries and benefits are very important to continue what we've been trying to do for the last few years.
And I agree with that. I think one issue we do need to consider is when we have various departments and they give off-pay plan raises to their employees, and we're giving the general group of employees 4% or 5%, whatever it is for that year, and then the department comes in and gives 6% additional, then we have an inequity. We have some employees in the county are making a 10 or 11% increase, while the general employees are getting a 4% increase. So I don't know if there's a way to reclaim, if a department does that, if we can reclaim our 4%. I don't know what the options are, but I think we need to realize that there's some equity issues involved in this too.
That's probably only elected department heads.
Maybe.
I don't think
I
it
assume.
would be
No, it wouldn't.
non-elected
No.
department heads doing that.
But it's not fair to all employees.
You have anything else, Mike?
I do not.
No other administrative business. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor to approve consent agenda. Any more discussion? Begin voting with myself. I vote aye.
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 Thanks, Mike.
Just trying to help.
Consent agenda passes.
You drummer, you.
That's what happens when you get old, you forget the word.
No, I thought he was about to get ready to go to his drum routine. I was trying to figure out what song it was.
I'm used to Vicky kicking me. Formal board action. Consider a motion to approve the 2024 annual noxious weed eradication report and the 2024 noxious weed management plan. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners. This morning you do have your annual noxious weed eradication progress report and noxious weed management plan before you for your consideration. These are required yearly by state statute, and so we are required to report the number of employees that we have working within the noxious weed department, the amount and type of chemicals that have been sold the previous year, and the number of funds and mill levies that we have collected in accordance with state statute to fund the noxious weed department. There are some numbers that were taken off of aerial photography regarding the acreage amounts of noxious weeds in the county, but it's a very big county and it's a very broad brush. When you're looking at those acreage amounts, it's better to look at the cost of the chemicals and the amount of chemicals that we have sold in order to come up with a budgetary number for the department. As you guys are aware, the cost of chemicals after COVID and the shutdowns that occurred increased by as much as 100% in some cases, but they have not gone down in price, but they have kind of quit going up. So we have seen the numbers remain flat since the large increases that we saw in the past. Be happy to try to answer any questions you have, or
Just another unfunded mandate to sell those chemicals at 75% of what the county pays for them.
I was just going to bring that up. I think we'll do that every single time somebody comes before us, and it's a state unfunded mandate, because I think a lot of the public doesn't understand things like that. This is a program that the state makes the county have, but does not pay for it. The local taxpayers have to pay for it, but we can't do anything about it because it's a state statute that we have to have it.
We have to provide the chemicals. I move that we approve the 2024 annual noxious weed eradication report and the 2024 noxious weed management plan.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll begin voting with myself. I vote aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Bill. Are you the next one, too?
Yep.
Yep. Consider a motion to approve the minimum area for the Federal Highway Administration adjusted urban boundary in Leavenworth County.
Commissioners, today for your consideration, we do have the approval of the minimum area of the Federal Highway Administration adjusted urban boundary for Leavenworth County and the city of Basel. The Federal Highway Department requires the reclassifications of roadways to urban at the point that areas within a given census block reach a defined population density. And so there were areas that have come underneath that new classification within the city of Basel and areas to the south. Mark and KDOT had originally requested a much larger area being encompassed by the new urban boundary. However, the city of Basel initially, and then I completely agree with their position regarding the classification, have pushed for the minimum area to be reclassified. Basel pushed back on the expanded area, and their initial position was due to the fact that once these areas are reclassified, all funding sources that can be applied through for grant funding would have to come through the Mid-America Regional Council.
Yeah.
Currently, all of these roads are eligible for KDOT funding. It would only impact one potential county project. There is a high-risk rural roads project that was identified in the local road safety plan that would be eligible for application in the future between K7 and 147th Street. That would no longer be eligible for that application window as it comes available twice a year. But that section of roadway also would require an MOU with the city, as the city does have two sections of that roadway they have annexed to the center of the road. So if I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but I think it's in the best interest of both the city and the county to go with the minimum area. I think that the KDOT recommendation and the Mid-America Regional Council recommendation was based upon future growth projections over the next 10 years until the new census data comes out. We may be required to go with the larger area that goes all the way up to Hollingsworth and all the way down to K32 in the future, but for now, for the next 9 years to 10 years, this map could be in effect.
Well, we can't afford to go that big of an area to go green projects.
Yeah, and it's only, I mean, because of what we're going to be discussing, I mean, it's a huge impact.
Right, it
So
is.
we need to make sure that we, can, as long as possible, can have the funding provided through the state, through KDOT, as opposed to MARC. So I think that, no, we definitely need to.
Can't see anywhere there'd be a good place to have an electric car charging study done in this area.
A couple of questions. Is Baser then on board with this?
Baser has already accepted this map.
Okay. And then the second question is, what federal agency or who enforces this?
Enforces it? The
Yeah,
Federal
like-
Highway Administration.
Federal Highway, they're the ones that are requiring the,
They're the ones that define what areas have to be classified as urban based on the population density.
so they're the ones in 10 years or whatever the time frame is will come and revisit this down the road.
Well, I think that they actually notified the Mid-America Regional Council, and then the Mid-America Regional Council handles it on the Federal Highway Department's request. But
Okay.
yes, it would be initiated by Federal Highway.
It seems like the Mid-America Regional Council carries a lot of water for the federal government.
It
A
appears
lot of money, not water.
money.
Well, same thing.
All projects, and we'll discuss this later, but all projects that receive federal funds must be listed in the Transportation Improvement Plan for all Mid-America Regional Council communities.
So you just need a motion on this then?
Yes.
Consider a motion, I move that we approve the minimum area for the Federal Highway Administration adjusted urban boundary in Leavenworth County.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with myself. I vote aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Bill. I think you're the next one too, right?
Work session. It's just present.
Presentation and discussion items. Mid-America Regional Council scoring of the county projects.
Kind of disappointed.
Who would like to begin this conversation?
Okay. So recently, I know we had previously discussed the projects within the regional transportation study and their need to be submitted into the connected KC 2050 portal in order to be eligible for federal funding. At that time, we submitted all the projects. A lot of the projects we had researched and found that they had been submitted either by Unified Government or the City of Baser or the City of Tonganoxie or other entities, but they wanted all of their projects to be updated because they had new scoring criteria for some of these projects, so you needed to input how these new scoring criteria is related to the projects that you already had.
And what were the dates when that change occurred?
I
Like
don't
you
have
said-
that here today, but it was at the previous to, in the last 6 months, previous to this application being submitted.
And then you had to go back in and resubmit.
We resubmitted projects that were already in the portal and provided additional information.
Okay.
So the scoring of these projects came back. It is important to remember that when you apply for any project through KDOT, whether it's the ST-100 bridge on Fairmount Road or the two bridges down on Golden Road or the high-risk rural roads projects or the Kansas Cost Share Program, any project that has federal funding involved in it must be listed in the Transportation Improvement Plan of the Mid-America Regional Council prior to federal funds being expended on the project. And so while it is important to try to score high and you try to get your projects in that top tier of projects, it is also important just to have your project in their portal and listed on their plan in order to not have to do an amendment to their plan at the time that we do receive funding, which is what we have done, is what I have done in the past here over the past 4 years. Is when we've received all of these grants, we do an amendment to the transportation improvement plan and get our project added after the fact. So the highest scoring project that we did have was K5, and that project scored the highest in many of the categories of the regional transportation plan, much higher than it did with the Mid-America Regional Council. It scored a 37 out of 200, which is a very low score, in my opinion. There are some things that we could do in the future, but they are based on studies. And the county does not have all of these studies in place that would be necessary to be able to get scoring within some of these different categories. I have made a list here today, but I'll go through a few of those in essence of time because there are so many different categories within the Mid-America Regional Council to score. But as you go through the application, you see the different categories. Project readiness, for example, had to do with how much money the county was going to put forth towards a project. Well, we're not offering $20 million towards a project or even $5 million towards a project, that it would be an Ike Transportation Plan KDOT project on a KDOT corridor. And so we did not score very well on that. We're putting in there that we're going to apply for Ike funding, and we're going to apply for any federal funds through the RAISE program that may become available, but they are not currently eligible. We did receive 6 points on K5. We put the same information in on other projects and received 0 points. So there was a bit of an inconsistency in that, but overall, unless we're having sales tax funds or some other county taxpayer funds set aside for these projects, we're not going to score well in that area. As far as regional plans, that is the second category. But we do not have a transit plan necessarily. We do not have a strategic transportation plan. We have a capital improvement plan that was geared towards KDOT. We geared that. KDOT paid for $250,000 of that $580,000 study, and that study was to the purpose of itemizing our projects, the new costs, and prioritizing them with quantifiable data that listed a priority of projects and the reasons why that was not subjective. And so that's what KDOT wanted us to do. We did exactly what they wanted to do. We scored very well. And I have verified with KDOT, again, that the Ike Transportation Program funding criteria is not based upon any of the scoring matrices that the Mid-America Regional Council uses. So they score on engineering, economic development, and public input, which we can score a 5 on a project and still be eligible for the Ike Transportation Program. But just to run down through some of these, there are lots of different plans and studies that we would need to be able to reference in order to score higher and have created some sort of document for. We do not have a complete streets policy in accordance with the existing MARC policy and a complete streets handbook. We do not have an autonomous and connected vehicle framework. We do not have a limited English proficiency plan. We do not have a public public participation plan prior to any large study taking place. We do not have any transit plans. We would need to incorporate the KCI Airport Public Transportation Services Action Plan, the Coordinated Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, Smart Moves Transit Plan, Peer Cities Transit Report, Transit Zero Fare Impact Analysis Study, and be active participant in the household travel survey.
Hey, Bill, let me ask you a question.
These are all things that we need to...
These are things that Johnson County and large cities can afford to do. Mm-hmm. When you make the criteria, as what you're saying right now, and this all costs thousands and thousands of dollars, then it puts us behind the 8 ball because other communities can do this because
handicap.
It really does. So we're being punished because we've kept our mill levy low and we try to do things within reason, and we don't have the funds that Johnson County or maybe even Miami County have. So we get docked because of it, because we're not spending money providing all those, and that makes it go one direction instead of us being able to have a chance at the table. I remember when that K5 came out, y'all did a great job. That was really rated high when we had the round table down there. And now to say this, these are things that we have to do to get up there. You want us to spend more money to do this? It doesn't seem like it's the best thing for all the smaller counties to do.
Well, it's not thousands and thousands; it's millions and
Millions.
millions.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's millions.
It was only thousands.
It's multiple millions of dollars to get these studies done. I don't know. They just announced yesterday that Johnson County is starting a new strategic transportation plan for their public transportation. I'm sure that's in the millions of dollars just for their one plan. So it is millions of dollars. Not only that is the projects would cost more. KDOT doesn't take into consideration the MARC matrix because they're not going to make their new corridors that they're wanting to build multimodal necessarily. Transportation hubs. They're not going to look at all of the green space factors, the environmental and climate action plans that MARC has. They aren't going to take into account all of these things because they drive the cost up quite a bit.
Commissioners, I want to touch on a couple things here. First of all, before they made these changes, we weren't getting money from Mid-America Regional Council for our projects. After we made these changes, we still aren't going to get money from Mid-America Regional Council for our projects. Bill is taking our projects to KDOT, where we do quite well, and he's getting a lot of funding from KDOT. We don't do well on county projects at Mid-America Regional Council because of, even before this, the requirements that they had for their scoring. The green space needs, the trails, all that kind of stuff that we don't include in our projects, and like he just pointed out, neither does KDOT.
That's what I was
So with this, it makes it even less likely that we will score well and do well for money from Mid-America Regional Council, but that doesn't mean that we won't continue to get funding directly from KDOT on projects that make sense and that we will go after. So we don't necessarily agree with their scoring matrices, but we understand that our projects, and I mean by our I mean the county's projects, not necessarily city projects, but the county's projects are just not going to score well. We'll continue to put them into the system so that if federal funds come through, we have that access. But I think realistically, we all know how much, Bill, how many grant funds have you gotten from Mid-America Regional Council for projects since you've been here?
Just the ones in Baser that we participated in.
And that wasn't ours, that was a city one.
But
none. We have gotten none. In the 7 years that I've been here, I cannot think of a time where Mid-America Regional Council gave us money for a county project. Now, the cities, again, they can do better because they will include things like trails and green space and so on. So this isn't, you can get wrapped up in this, but honestly, it hasn't changed anything. We still aren't going to get money from Mid-America Regional Council. That's the end result. We have to go after other avenues, which Bill has done a great job of doing.
Still doesn't make it right.
And I find it
We have so many
fascinating.
projects that wouldn't have been completed without the funding through KDOT that Bill has gotten for us. And through our federal legislators, Senator Moran's office has gotten us funds. We haven't received them yet, but they are pending, let's say. So I don't want to get too far down the road in this is a scoring matrix that Mid-America Regional Council puts together. There are cities that spend a lot of money on the studies that he just mentioned. I don't think it makes sense for us to do that, and we just have to accept the fact that our projects aren't going to score well at MARC, but we're going to continue to look for funding elsewhere.
I think it's interesting that one of the things you brought up, and I know that the study's already being conducted, and then the decisions are already going to be made as far as transit and the zero fare. Those studies, there is a study that's already been conducted by the KCATA to make a determination about the impact of it with the cooperation of all of the entities involved. So that is almost an obsolete, or will be an obsolete requirement very quickly, depending on what the decisions that are being made regarding zero fare, what decisions are made for that. And that will be coming up within probably the next 2 months as far as the decision making on the part of transit. So I think that's because that's not to me an appropriate matrix.
Agreed.
And the city of Leavenworth is doing fine and dandy on having fair charge for public transit right now. That I think that our commissioner back there would agree that there is there's not a negative impact on the city of Leavenworth having the Ride LV. It's been very successful to date. Not yet, but it's been very successful to date. So I just think that's
And there are some areas like 155th Street was a county roadway that Baser got funding.
Right.
For the city project, it will become a city roadway. Tonganoxie has opportunities to apply for funding on Evans Road or Washington Street that is on the border. So there are these areas that are on the boundary roadways that the cities can take opportunities to apply for funding and connect schools with sidewalks like Lansing has talked about doing, and apply for funding through the Mid-America Regional Council for opportunities. They're just not for rural development.
Exactly. I think there was a lot of discussion yesterday at the Port Authority meeting kind of on some of the scoring and especially regarding the cities. And then that scoring, although maybe low, but if they hit the cities, even the smaller cities can get up to the 40 or 50 mark, that in order for there to be equity, and Tom was there, just to kind of bring those city applications more up and more likely to be funded. So, and that's where, the county, we're not likely to have a whole lot of
and that hasn't changed. I'm just going to point that hasn't changed.
Our priority isn't to attach a sidewalk to a county road in order to obtain funding through MARC.
And the cost associated with the improvements that they require to score well, it just doesn't make sense for county projects. In the cities or in the boundary roads, maybe it makes sense, but for our projects, it just doesn't. And so realistic expectations, we talk about that a lot here. Let's put our realistic expectations. We're going to continue to submit. We're going to likely continue to score low, and it's not going to change a thing. They're still not going to give us money.
We did argue for bridges this year. They had an opportunity where they were going to do some revisionary language on bridge applications through the STP program, and so we were successful in getting them to include some language that may provide us a small opportunity to apply for bridge funding in the future. It'd still have to meet a certain criteria, and it would have safety factors and green spaces and probably certain vegetations incorporated into it. But there is a small opportunity for bridge applications moving forward.
That's an off-system bridge?
I think it could be an FAS route since it's eligible for federal funding. But
So I reviewed this document last night, and Commissioner Smith provided it. It comes from a lot of these. The drivers of a lot of this is this Priority Climate Action Plan that's driving a lot of these requirements. And I just want to read a couple things from it. The MARC Climate Action Team originally focused on developing a plan that was at least compatible with the Paris Agreement, meaning that the Regional Climate Action Plan would strive to meet the target of 80% greenhouse gas reductions from the 2005 levels. That's the Paris Climate Change Agreement that, of course, you've heard about. President Trump pulled us out of that because it was going to cost so much industry in this country, and a lot of people argued it would deindustrialize our country. So this document, our current president has placed us back under this system, and this that's coming down from the federal government, the guidelines that this is based on this Paris climate change and this whole agenda. They have an entire agenda. But I did think it was very interesting. If you look on page 10 and you look where they're talking about transportation, One of the greenest forms of transportation in America is inner-city passenger rail. And we have talked about it. This commission has signed a letter. The legislature is currently in the process of funding a train that will go to Newton and maybe up to Kansas City, the Heartland Flyer. And this document doesn't have one word about inner-city passenger rail being expanded. And so I'm thinking, you progressives didn't even hit the mark on what you're trying to get here. Because that is a way that we can get improvements on the environment that we all agree on. But that's not in here. The only mention of rail that I saw, they do mention transit. There's several mentions of transit. And they mention walking, and they mention biking. But I look at my, for example, Commission District 5. You're driving from out. Are you going to have people walk from Alexandria Township into Kansas City to work? Or maybe they can ride a bike. That's what this document does for Leavenworth County. It doesn't do anything for us. It is designed for urban environments, and then they put all the criteria for their decision making based on urban environments where you can walk and bike to work, and then they don't score us so we can get projects. So all of this funding is focused on just going to the inner cities, and Leavenworth County sits here paying $20,000 a year to be in this organization, and they are marking us down and giving us, what did you say, 25 points out of 200?
37.
37 points? Well, that's better. Fill it out.
There's some others, though, that we didn't score that well.
Yeah.
And I would like to know from you, and I did not find it in this document, what is the definition, 2 words, what is the definition of environmental justice, and what is the definition of climate resilience? Do you have that definition, or is that just something floating out there? We're all supposed to figure out what this justice is they're talking about.
You know, Tom?
Yeah, Tom.
Come on. Nice try, Tom.
I just thought you were going to be able to see on the radar.
I could have a study done.
I didn't find a definition in the report.
Tom, you can sit next to Bill.
You may need a tag team this.
At some point in the past 2 years, I took a turn or said something that made me the environmental guy in the county. Environmental justice, I believe, and I think there are a number of terms like that are kind of interchangeable that ideally just kind of go back to taking care of the planet in all the ways that we kind of see on the news and TV and all that kind of stuff, reducing greenhouse emissions and whatnot. There is a plan, and I will find it. I do have a matrix somewhere that kind of shows what some of those things are. I believe there's also a program or plan called Justice 40, which I've had to, particularly on a couple of the grants that we've submitted recently, had to go through and kind of show how is the county doing, adhering to these Justice 40 things. And you can go as deep into them as you want to and make them sound as militant or as non-militant as you want them to be. Our submissions were actually pretty light and pretty easygoing language. Didn't really commit us to anything, but simply came up with very creative ways to detail how LEDs at the Justice Center will make Leavenworth County a better place.
Well, doesn't it seem like it's difficult if you live in a small town or you live out in the country? It's difficult to come up to their definition of environmental justice because we have to drive cars to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's what I said at the Port Authority meeting yesterday. And I assume you and I are looking at the same document.
Oh yeah, I read the whole thing.
As you go back into like the transportation items, measure T1 through I think T5. It's all stuff that, and I don't want to say that just doesn't apply to us, but it's very difficult with the type of community we have versus one that's closer to the urban core. It makes sense for mass transit to go about downtown Kansas City. It makes no sense for us to have mass transit or a light rail line going through the county that really connects two things. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to push bicycles and things. Bicycles are great. I am a cyclist myself, so I'm not down on bikes. But to suggest that everybody in Leavenworth County ride their bike to work is a bit asinine, as much of the county leaves the county to go to their employer each day. In the meeting that you and I went to, I don't know, a month or more ago, I mean, there were some interesting ideas where local government should buy, if you have a population of 60,000, local government should buy 30,000 bikes and just sort of expect, everybody to double up on those bikes and never get back in their cars. There was a notion that should be the way. So there are some very stringent,
there was a notion
very narrow idealism here on some parts. Now, I am all for doing things that we can to support our environment, support clean air and whatnot. But there is a part that simply doesn't make sense for.
Well, we've supported bike routes in Leavenworth County. We've supported those things, and I would think that would be environmental justice, if you want to call it that. But what's resilience? What is that?
Resilience?
Resilience.
I think they're about interchangeable terms. They're just about interchangeable terms. But kind of how I started talking about this at the Port Authority yesterday is we were talking about the scoring that Bill has addressed thus far this morning, and my point was if these measures that are in the document that you've referred to bleed into the applications, there will be a day where we get 4 points out of 200 instead of 37 points out of 200. So these things are just going to make, I think, full adoption of climate action plans and whatnot. Again, I'm not against the environment, but full adoption as these things become sort of the standard process and standard applications for all the normal stuff that we do, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult and increasingly difficult for us to score well on these things. And I think that's really why we need to focus our energy on appeasing and applying to KDOT rather than any other entity.
But don't think that they're not going to try to bring this to KDOT and implement these same type of things. It's just going to take longer because we've got more rural people.
Absolutely.
But I'm telling you, this is a document that is not in favor of ex-urban, rural, or small-town people because they don't see us as being just. That's the way they look at it. We're not just because we don't walk or we don't ride a bike. And we would. Maybe we don't walk and ride a bike to work, but we do walk and ride bikes. And I think the people in Leavenworth County are just as just. In fact, some of the farmers in Leavenworth County are more concerned about the environment than I've ever seen any of the folks.
That's how they make their living.
That's right.
If they're not taking care of their farms, they're not
scoring for that.
profit.
Yeah.
I would hope that Bill wouldn't want to put a tree canopy along our corridors.
No, not particularly.
I thought we would cut them all
cutting
down to keep
but
the obstructions out of the right of way.
Yeah, you need to have the sunlight hitting the roadway to activate the salt on the blacktops and melt the snow off the ground.
That'd be ours to maintain.
Commissioners, this isn't the first time something like this has come up through Mid-America Regional Council. Those of us who've been around long enough have experienced this. I think the reason it's getting the traction it's getting now is because the federal government has tied these things to their grant applications. Nearly all the ARPA grants, nearly everything that they've put forward requires that you discuss at a minimum or address the same agenda. So the only reason now it's getting traction, I don't think that there has been this wild change in attitude in all of the communities, but they realize that to get the funds from the federal government, they have to have this in place, because it's one of the questions you have to ask or answer, environmental equality / justice. So they have to have it in place to get the funds. And number two, they have to start following it. And they have to put a grading scale in on what you're doing. So
We need to do a better job of wordsmithing.
Well, we're not gonna say that we won't follow it. We'll try.
Oh, okay.
But certain things just don't make sense.
Better word for BS.
Well, we can certainly, like at some of our projects, we can certainly have trails and we can have bike paths and we can have green spaces, and that makes it a nicer place to live. So there's some good things. This is not all bad, but the agenda behind it is just very concerning coming, and I am sure it's coming from the Biden administration.
Who maintains these trails?
Well, it'd be us, wouldn't it?
Okay, so now we got to start a parks department. Yeah, I just did our county, period. I think we need to send a letter that reflects that.
Now, Tom attended the meeting with. I went to this, and it was climate change action meeting, but we did. In the committee I was in, we did thoroughly discuss rail, and it's completely absent from the report. So I don't know if that's something that we can relay to them, or this is supposed to be a draft.
Right.
But that's concerning when we bring concerns to them and they don't respond at all to something that is obviously green and sustainable and something that I think we have a majority of the people that support it, not a word. I don't know if we can, in our letter, relay that concern as well.
So I think a letter is a good idea, and although I agree with most of the things you said here, and dealing with Mark over the past 20, 30 years, I've always said they're more city-centric than they are county-centric. They're more concerned with the 37 cities that are members instead of the 9 counties.
I used to be part of that.
But before we write this letter, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. There's a lot of other things. You got to look at the big picture. There's a lot of other things that Mark does for our membership fee. We would not have the 911 system we have today if it wasn't for Mid-America Regional Council.
No.
The 911 system is a living, breathing animal. It takes a lot of maintenance. It doesn't stop at county and city boundaries. It's multi-jurisdictional. Mark helps us with that. The software program has to work beyond the county line and beyond the city limits, and Mark helps us with that. GIS mapping, the aerial photography, our membership in Mid-America Regional Council saves us way more than $20,000 a year on aerial photography.
First one was $350,000
for the first
30.
About 25. So our membership in Mark pays for itself just on the aerial photo project alone. So just want to point that out before we send a letter blasting.
I understand that. I understand that, Jeff.
Yeah, but I agree with everything you're saying about these. The criteria they set up, we're set up to fail right out of the gate.
I understand that, but I think it doesn't hurt to maybe explain our side to it. I agree, being in Lansing for those 30-something years, I use Mark a lot on a lot of grants. It's for cities, basically is. Trails, sidewalks, roads. But at the same time, I don't think it hurts to let them know that we're concerned about the way this came about.
I agree.
Yeah, just to put it on file.
Yeah,
and say, hey, we got concerns here. Please keep us that in the back of your noggin. Whether they're doing any good, I don't know. But just to walk away and say, okay, it's the way it's been forever, I don't think that's the right approach. We need to put something out there and say, hey, we're concerned about how these numbers are playing out, or something to that degree.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we did give input, like on the rail part, we did give them input, and it was ignored. I think that should be.
And that's what I'm saying. This should talk about too, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be nice if they'd include a scoring category about your air quality.
Right, that's what I talked
we'd
about.
be
the
rock
salary,
stars.
that's where we
so
get
that
Except for today.
no matter how many of those implement,
that's true.
how many of those green initiatives you implement, what's your current air quality?
That's true.
Yeah, without Miami
It'd be
and
nice if
Livermore
they
counties.
include
That's
that.
true. Yeah, that's a
Ozone
fact.
days would be a little tough, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the things I dove into, is just to look at some of those, those things that they have to, that the Mid-America Regional Council has to report. And if you look at the graphs, and then you get the breakout of some of those.
We should get projects based on our air quality.
Well,
It's a big thing now.
That's not rated.
We also have open ditches, which is
Right,
something that it's green space. You're creating green space by having a flat bottom open ditch.
absolutely.
And that
then we have-
the vegetation in it filters the water and it holds the sediment.
Well, the entire
What about floodplain?
Creek
We,
Basin.
it's not that we aren't doing some of these things.
Missouri.
It's
And
that we
Kansas.
don't have all of the framework that that they want you to reference in
Well, we
place.
just need to call it green space instead of.
I need some more
No, I'm
boxes.
just saying. I was going to say, we have to do a better job of wordsmithing.
Just
And,
Stranger Bottoms here in a few months, all be
Sure.
green space.
right,
Crops.
just
Well, like you said, we haven't gotten any projects except the one in Baser, correct? In the last years?
Baser got several projects. They received trail funding,
Right.
and they received 155th Street, and
Parallel.
they got 150.
Yeah, but cities with
That was all part of the same.
No.
I mean,
They've gotten
they're
three.
working together.
They've gotten 4 separate grants. Probably the ones that I've helped present with them, they've received probably $15 million. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but approximately $15 million.
But the county has never received money.
I wouldn't say never. I think I saw a
There's an
spreadsheet one
off-system
time that
bridge
there
one
was an
time.
off-system bridge. It was
Yeah.
funded maybe
Oh, okay.
15 years ago or so.
every 15 years, what we need to run.
We need to, I think we had them in here one time, the folks from
I remember.
from Mark, and I don't think it would hurt their leadership to come and give a presentation, and maybe we express our concerns to them.
I think Jeff's right on the point. He's talking about they do so much. When I talk to them, I want to make sure we're not out and out attacking them, because they are do things, even though they do more things for cities. I just wanted to bring it to their attention. And I remember them coming in, Mike, just to bring it to their attention that we're concerned about this. And maybe as Vicki said, they need to add some more boxes.
We're not going to attack, but we're going to assert our.
Mike,
Well, one thing that was brought up when they discussed this yesterday at the Port Authority was that Vernon Fields, the council member for
Baser,
was the STP, Surface Transportation Program chairman, and so these concerns have not gone unheard. He has voiced these same concerns
Vernon
over the
did.
course of his tenure and going to the last probably 5 to 7 years worth of STP program meetings. But they do take a very inside-out approach. They start at the urban core, they focus everything in on the urban core, and then they go to the outer edges of their region, and they focus on cities first, and then counties second. And so if you're going to focus urban core, fringe cities, county, we're kind of at the bottom of their focus, which has been the way.
but Bill,
But we still have to make sure that, we're advocating in that even because we have smaller cities within our county.
Yeah.
We don't have the huge cities that are in Johnson and Wyandotte and Casey Mo and all those areas. I mean, so we need to make sure that we also advocate for and are part of advocating for the support of our smaller populated cities.
I think right now Tonganoxie has opportunities.
Right.
Baser has received a lot of funding. I think Lansing has opportunities.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of opportunity on Evans Road in front of the elementary school. I think it's the elementary, maybe the middle school. But
well, Bill, don't you think too? And just throwing this out, Mike. To Mike's point, writing a letter is good, and I totally agree with that. But it probably doesn't hurt for them to come to our place, our house, and talk to us a little bit. When you stay in front of people all the time, they tend not to forget you.
Is Tonganoxie doing anything about applying for any funds on that?
they applied for funds on a new 14th Street connection,
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, which would wrap around the school and come out
Yeah,
the
it's
south
gonna
end.
be a
But
new street.
yeah, there'd be a whole new street. They have an offset intersection at the northeast corner of the school, and then they have an open ditch that's lined with riprap with no sidewalk connectivity that they could then tie into their city street sidewalk plan that I think would score well. It's very similar to what Baser scored, the highest in the entire metro area.
Okay.
Well, if there's an improvement there, we can get rid of County Road 6.
I'll leave that to David.
Well, I do think the idea of inviting the Mid-America Regional Council representatives here would be a good
I
idea.
think that's more effective than a letter, personally.
Yeah, they do, because when you come out to a person.
I think we ought to do both because this is timely. This is a draft,
Right, and I agree with you. But I also think that my thing would be to add some things that acknowledge that even though it expands out, that we have the counties border the cities, and that we need to make certain that we're looking at some of the things that we do have to offer air quality And we do have green space.
New boxes.
And all of these things, just to add a couple of the boxes
Yep,
that
yeah,
allow
I
for
agree with you.
the counties to be able to improve their
Yep.
scoring potential based on rural communities. Because we're also, within Leavenworth County, we're approving several subdivisions that are not within the cities. And, I think that we kind of need to begin to look at that. And maybe that's something that we need to look at as far as trying to talk to developers that are out in the county and not within the cities to make sure that they're addressing putting in little park areas or, small park. Because I know the cities kind of have those in the requirements for developers to have green space type development. So maybe that's something that as a Board of County Commissioners we need to kind of begin to look at as well. That's just
And
to
maybe
improve some of those responses to matrices.
I agree, Vicki, about the boxes. And when you come out here too, they may tell us something that we're not totally clear on, which I think we are. But they may say, if you did this or if you did that, just that one-on-one conversation, not an email, not a Zoom, but right here in front of us, so we can share in a civil manner our concerns and what they need to come give us, maybe give us a little bit of direction.
So
We're past due.
So I agree. So Bill and Mark, you guys want to see about putting a letter together to send to them, and then also reach out to them, see if they would come and meet with us. I don't know which one of you wants to.
Sure.
Mark, probably.
Yeah.
And we can combine the two with very politely kind of expressing concerns and then asking them to please come and visit with us.
You
so
can
that
have
we
it as a part of it.
So
Yeah.
that we can have a dialogue.
And I think for comments on this document, we're in a window here that's like just a few days.
Draft, and it's-
So I don't know how we relay our concerns on those things.
Vote no.
I'm not sure isn't Commissioner Smith on that committee. That would be.
So it's consensus of the board to vote no.
Vote no on what?
Priority climate action plan.
I don't think we have to vote right now, do we?
No.
Not
At the board meeting.
that Commissioner Smith sits on that committee, so it will be in front of him to vote on it.
Yeah, that's right.
at the Mid-America
Oh, yeah,
Region.
absolutely. You should vote no.
Well,
I think that's where you
Yeah.
relay this information
Yeah.
is to
Can
that.
you relay, though, our concerns of like the,
Yeah.
It may be as soon as tomorrow, isn't it? Is that tomorrow?
Tuesday.
No, next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Fourth Tuesday of the month.
well, you want us to formalize that in a motion?
I don't think you need to. We'll just bring it up at the meeting, the Mark meeting.
It's before next Wednesday, so we might as well do it now. I would
I mean-
think.
I think this needs to be reworked.
So you're going to make a motion that says Leavenworth County does not support the regional priority climate action plan?
No, I don't.
How about we make a motion that the Leavenworth County has concerns and believes there's some priorities that need to be changed within the priority climate action
We
plan?
don't support
That's
the
really not-
100%.
Not really a motion.
I think that
Item.
I think by consensus, we have shared the concerns with our
Yeah.
representatives, and we're just asking them to please relay those concerns.
I mean, if you're going to vote yes or no on this, I would vote no. But as far there, it doesn't matter if you vote no and it's going to pass. There's still things that need to be changed in it, like adding the rail.
And I think that these guys can bring that up, that is absent within the plan, and it should be probably added as
I think adding an air quality
an air
scoring
quality.
criteria
Right.
should be added.
That those things should be added to the plan, because those are important things that we actually are major contributors to that.
And it's supposed to be the thing nowadays, so.
Maybe, somehow green space where we obviously have lots of green space. We have the floodplain,
That's why I
which
said
should
that.
qualify as green
That's
space.
green space.
Percentage of undeveloped ground.
Right.
Could be credited.
17%
Right, but
of
there
the
needs to
county.
be, that's why I said add some matrices that kind of
We've
give
got enough green space.
credit for some of those things that, when it's urban, that's kind of lost. It's just a concrete jungle.
Okay.
And
I think
the
we-
walking and biking from way out in the middle of nowhere is just not feasible.
All right, I think we have a plan. So the consensus of the board is we'll bring that up at the MARC meeting next week.
No.
And add a couple of, like the air quality and green space.
Vote no on the
Like that.
overall.
All right. Bill, do you have anything else?
I was told yesterday that the Ike Transportation Program will be announced March the 7th.
March 7th?
So as long as they don't delay it, it's been delayed twice, but right now it's on the schedule for March 7th, the governor's announcement.
Does that mean the feds are going to approve their budget?
I would say that means that they're trying to schedule their Facebook post, so they already know what's out there, and they're just trying to figure out where the governor's going to be to make the announcement. So
I think they wanted the legislative session to wrap up prior to the announcement of the Ike Transportation Program project.
So they don't want to have screaming.
probably some of that too.
Yep.
Turnaround ends Friday, right?
When do you think we'll bid 235th Street?
About 8 to 10 weeks after the federal government approves the budget.
Right, that's why I said we could.
Because we have email confirmation. We're waiting on the amended agreement from KDOT, but they have confirmed in at least 2 emails that they are going to approve an extension to the end of the year for our funding through the Kansas Cost Share Program. The issue will be, and I don't know how larger projects that are, say, $100 million will handle this, but the window to spend the federal funds, the back end of that, the drop dead date, is not being extended by the budget not being passed. So as soon as the budget is passed from the federal government and we have our FHWA agreement in place, we need to immediately bid that project because normally you would have an 18-month
Absolutely.
window to spend your funds. Now that is going to be down to 12 months or maybe even
Less.
10 months.
It'd be less than
Less.
12 months.
Maybe 10 to 8 months to get the first $2 million out the door on the project will definitely be the ones we submit back to the federal highway.
Good night.
Make sure we get those funds committed. I mean,
Wonder how much
spent.
the project's going to increase by delaying though with inflation.
I bet it went up.
Probably about the amount we'll get out of it.
More than 3.1%.
Yeah.
18, 36% over 2 years.
Okay, so you know how the water line's coming along on that project?
Daniels Excavating is working out there on behalf of the water district. I assume it's coming along fairly slowly based on the pile of rock that I've seen them digging through, but they're actively working on it. I don't know how well it's going necessarily. They haven't
Well,
contacted
weather's
me.
been
They set
okay.
new charges to blast, didn't you know?
Weather's been pretty decent. So they'll meet their deadline.
Yes, they're out there working. They'll meet it.
Okay.
So while Tom's here, any news on the regional collaboration on the
Panasonic?
Panasonic? Any
Crickets.
no news at all, huh?
No new meetings have been scheduled anyway now.
Yeah, that's kind of concerning because we don't want to be in the dark.
Exactly. I'm trying to think when the last meeting was. It's
been a while.
It was even in December or maybe even before that.
Is there any plans on getting more electricity to that plant? When you said you don't want to be in the dark, so.
Well, I know that it was brought up to the lieutenant governor in Topeka about the Lawrence power plant, and they were planning to close it in 2024.
Right.
And they said, well, what's your alternative here? Because this battery plant's going to need a lot of power. And now they have pushed that back to 2028. And I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back a lot farther than that.
Well, it'll take
So-
a lot of wind and solar to run that.
Right.
And solar emits enough heat.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and that's
not
the other
doing
thing
justice to
that
the environment.
this document is
Interestingly
completely, I mean, if you're in favor, no mention of nuclear power, no mention of cleaner coal fire power plants, No mention of anything. The technology has changed. The new coal-fired plants are so much cleaner.
And there's a huge push for nuclear at the federal level. I mean,
And there-
again, that was kind of when we were in D.C.
Well,
this
but
year.
if you go to
no-
zero
no talk
carbon
about it.
by 2050, that's not going to be any coal.
Yeah, and we have mountains of coal. We should be using technology to get the carbon out of the coal and still use the power.
Going back to Panasonic, I do believe an additional substation is planned for that area, but the energy market is more than maybe any other is still experiencing significant supply chain issues. So, in a meeting with Evergy, actually within the past month, any new substation that is planned now, Panasonic may be fast tracked because of what it is. But any new substation, really any new power generation component that comes online, has a lead time of at least 4 years right now.
Right.
Oh my goodness!
And Lisa and I, LCDC and I were talking about this the other day. Even if we have a great project show up today to take over whatever space, and they need a substation, they need to be willing to wait probably 4 years to be able to get the power that they need right now.
Maybe we need a power coal-fired plant.
Maybe the county needs to, the Board of Public Utilities that we're forming, maybe that needs to get on our agenda.
And for the record, there aren't many projects that are willing to wait 4 years to do what they want to do right away.
So you bring up an issue now that you just jogged my memory is we have a document from Tonganoxie that's supposed to have a corrected land description. Have we received that document and have we reviewed that description?
No.
And we're in the 30 days right now, right?
The 30 days doesn't start until they notify us.
Okay, I thought when they adopted it, it did. So we haven't even been notified.
Upon receipt, certified ordinance or resolution from the city of Tonganoxie regarding annexation, the review period begins.
Okay. So we're just kind of waiting.
And Commissioner, again, the county has extended an offer to assist in the preparation of the legal description of the proposed annexation.
And duly noted.
Do we have anything else for Bill or Tom?
No, I think they've done enough.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Other presentation and discussion items? I don't have anything for this week because I think you guys are going to say what I was going to say anyway.
You went to the
Homeschooling
presentation yesterday at Elm Grove Baptist Church, and then Commissioner Stevens and I attended Jake LaTurner's speech the other night.
Yep.
It was his birthday, so we got out of there early so we could get to talk to him. And we got JCAB tomorrow.
Yeah. D JCAB.
The real one.
And
Actual.
I think that's all I got.
I was
And
amazed.
American Regional Council next week.
I was amazed at the abilities that some of the kids have, and it also brought back memories of how I hated English grammar.
Did
They
you
were
remember to take from
diagramming
my little
sentences.
books that I got? No, you didn't.
Nope.
Thanks, Jack.
Luckily, we didn't have a pop quiz.
Oh, man.
There's some really neat educational materials available through the National Association of Counties for educating young people about the role of county government.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good information. If you go on
I
the
don't
NACO
know if we
website.
need to educate young people. I think maybe some of the older
Well, but
people need to educate.
yeah, well, they can click and access it too if they want to. I mean, there's just some really, really good information and good materials that are out there, and you can access it on the NACO website to look at it, and it's to put into schools or to for us to have available to show, and it's good information, and I think that a lot of people really don't understand the role of county government and what the responsibilities are, and it's a good place to start is with the education system, and they have the materials that are for all the way through high school, so it's moving all the way through the different levels of education, because then we can begin to prepare our young people, some of them, to become engaged in the voting process and even who's running, and that's just kind of my thing. So, yeah.
Vicki, do you?
Oh, do I have? Yeah, I yesterday attended the Port Authority meeting, and there was a lot of discussion regarding the transportation issues and plans and things that were affected or impacted by the scoring on the Mid-America Regional Council, and then went to the City of Leavenworth meeting last evening, and they announced and I think they're going to do it ongoing that this is USD 453, is their superintendent's going to begin meeting monthly in the mornings with patrons so that they can ask questions and things of the superintendent of schools, and maybe some of the others will consider doing the same. And I think that's it.
Jeff, I just have one thing. I'll meet with City Administrator Tim Vandal next month. As y'all know, we meet with him once a month for lunch to discuss things that the county or city can work together and any information we need to share. So if anything comes out of that, I'll report back.
Like your sewer lines coming along?
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. I vote aye.
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 We are adjourned.
So